Everyone, welcome to chapter 22, Black Child Parents, the New Factor and Black Genocide. I'll get it started by reading the first paragraph. The levels of collective and self-consciousness and self-respect that a people carry can be determined accurately by the standard of care and development it demands for all of its young. The future of the people. It is virtually impossible in the final quarter of the 20th century for 99% of Black teenage male and female persons to raise children who will be emotionally strong and stable and capable of functioning effectively under the stress of a racist society. The very dynamic that produces the pathological situation wherein children attempt to have and rear children is designed to ensure Black functional inferiority. Yet, 25% of all Black children born today in the US are born to Black teenagers. This means that at very least 25% of all Black children will suffer in terms of their development and will be impaired in their potential to function effectively under the stress of racism. I refer to the failure to ensure the maximum development of the genetic potential of all Black children, as well as the ultimate waste of this genetic potential as Black genocide. Any- So I thought this was really important because even today, you know, the Black collective is not aware of the genocide going on. The Black collective doesn't say, "Hey, racism is war. It's a war against Black people. It's genocide." Yet they'll share ICE camps, giving hysterectomies to people, you know, and unfortunately, when you don't understand racism, what it is and how it works, you're unable to connect the dots, unable to understand that, like, why this is happening, and able to use the right words because words are also tools, you know. And it's very hard to solve a problem if you can't even communicate the problem effectively. And I also want to read this part, also from page 259. During the American slave era, Black teenage females were forced to breed baby after baby and were prevented from actively caring for the development of these slave babies. There was no concern for these human beings reaching maximum levels of genetic potential. This lack of concern for the development of these young human beings was enforced by racist slave masters and slave mistresses. Today, just as in slave society, Black teenage girls are caught up in a similar destructive dynamic, producing human beings who subsequently are subjected to low level development and treated in inhumane ways. So, just reminds me of, like, the child abuse that has been heavily normalized, like the neglect, the putting your child in front of a TV that's going to program them to hate themselves and to be unconstructive. The Just how parents yell at their kids like they are also children, which they are because they've been made that way. So, and also how during slavery, like those our ancestors weren't didn't have the luxury or agency to care for their children, though I'm sure they wanted to. But now we have a group of children, a group of people, a group of children people who are having babies to feel like love and whatnot, but don't know how to raise that baby effectively.
or don't even know what love really is.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
It's more codependency.
hmm And this part, like, This part is also super important. Um, because I don't know. I think when we talk about racism, when I personally talk about racism, people love to say, "I already know about racism," or "I already like know about white people," or "I already know about the system." Like and a lot of times I couldn't be like farther from the truth. So I want to read from page 260. It says the more complex a social system becomes, the higher level of emotional maturity and formal education needed to negotiate that system successfully. Often, the ultimate level of functioning reached by children is correlated with the level of emotional maturity achieved by the parents prior to the birth of the child. So, if I'm trying to, tell someone about race and white supremacy, and they like, it becomes like I already know this kind of thing. That already shows to me that this person like doesn't have the emotional maturity to do the bare minimum of just listen and just hear a person, knowledge and try to take it in. Pretty sad. And also a lot of people don't understand how complex and diabolical this system is. A lot of people aren't aware of white supremacy, racism, what it is, or how it works at all.
100%. I just wanted to like just observe like my own family dynamic through reading through hearing what was being read and while I was reading it myself. When I was my mother is would had me at like what 20 something, so it was, I guess it was a fine age in a sense, but like in terms of emotional development, like she had just moved over to the UK from Sierra Leone, and before that it was more like survival, just basically trying to get over here, like staying at very like with various friends. Like the family dynamic was so different in the sense that she didn't just come from, she had been independent for a while herself, but like I what I do understand from like us growing up, even though she didn't raise me when to the stage that we are at now, there was so much lack of emotional development that it's almost as if the relationship that we can build, if I choose to now, it won't be what I know to be a mother and daughter relationship. It would be like a sistership. It would be very much like, because it's like where even right now she's learning academically, despite the fact she's my mother, the relationship that we're having to take is very much and it's not the actual dynamic where we are kind of growing up in terms of like mental maturity together. And I'm not taking away from the fact that she's an adult and she's extremely mature in several different ways in terms of survival or however, but in terms of self-respect, self-love, self-grooming, um, self-sufficient mental capacity, we are coming together in this realm. And in that, for me, it's like something I have to accept and not be upset about, and just accept the roles that the way that the cards have been played out in a sense. And I thought like yeah, reading over this just kind of just allowed me to mesh the two together as to how that could come about in the white supremacist society.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Mary. I resonate a lot with that because I have a similar dynamic. I mean, this chapter overall was just like really, really good. Helped me contextualize like a lot of things that I've seen and experienced. Obviously, had a kid as a teenager, so that like idea about emotional maturity and like my parents. I mean, my mom had me at 35, but like how Dr. Welsing says, like when you like she had her first kid in her 20s, and every child after, that you're not like it's just like you delaying your emotional maturity, your emotional growth. And I think that that's kind of like what happened with my family too, like also the same situation of like immigrating here and being put into survival mode and not really working on your emotional well-being because you don't even have the capacity to. Just a lot that this chapter I thought was really good. Like just a lot of dynamics that I've seen. Children taking care of parents, children being like, and just like parents really just harming their kids unintentionally by just like being very, very, very emotionally mature in front of them. Yeah, it was a really good chapter.
I can relate with both of you as well. About parents not giving themselves that time to emotionally mature. As you were saying, like with you having a mother that was a teenager, but even though she had you at 35, because she had had previous children when she was earlier, while she was younger, she still didn't give us that time to emotionally develop. And that was a similar situation for me. My mom had her first child at 16, but even though she had me when she was quite old, she still hasn't had that emotional development time for herself. All she knew was as a child to be a parent, if you get what I mean. But then she wasn't even an adequate parent in certain capacities because she delayed her own emotional development. So I guess we have to, because of this whole like breaking down the whole white supremacy and stuff, we have to be more what's the word, more lenient on our parents and like how they may have damaged us in certain ways because they were damaged themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, like my mom, like she was not that emotionally mature as well. She came into like large amounts of money at a very early age, but she didn't have the much maturity to manage that money. And also when in her rearing of me, when I would like voice my mind and my opinions about the way I was being treated, and I felt that I was making like a lot of logical sense in what I was saying, but due to her emotional maturity, she was not like able to see me as anything other than like her child who should listen and not talk, not so called talk back. And also it's very familiar and common in the Black community to hear that I'm not one of your little friends. You can't talk to me any kind of way. It's like you can't talk to me like we're equal, or like that you can like. It's really like disheartening to really like dissect parenting in the Black community under the system of white supremacy.
Yeah, to add, oh wow, I lost my train of thought actually. I was gonna to add on to that, like I like after reading this chapter, like I read it this morning, I took a shower and I like was like just like analyzing all my like childhood and so many like experiences that I've had, and just like it makes you really think about how many years your parents have lived almost kind of dead, like emotionally, like like in terms of like really maturing and understanding who they are and like growing as people. Like I think Mary was talking about how her aunt was like always working and then coming home and like having to do more work and then being like resentful. And like my family was the same way. And it was always the children that my mom let out her aggression on, and not like the actual partner who wasn't like doing the amount of labor that would have made things like equitable. And I think that we pass on so many bad traits from our parents. I remember one time, like I had a memory that I didn't even have for a long time, but like I think my dad said something to me that was like really just like really, really mean. And I think I was like in middle school or something. And I told my mom about it. And like she didn't talk to me about it. She didn't explain to me anything. She just like bought me something and then just like didn't say anything about it. And it just like further reinforced like in my adulthood, there's so many moments where I'm so avoidant of conflict literally because of my mom and the way that she would like avoid conflict until she like blew up. And that was like so, I don't know, I just like decoded or like really understood a lot of the stuff that I went through as a kid from these pages, and really understanding that a lot of people are emotionally immature in this world, and then it just perpetuates this cycle. And until you become aware of it as an adult, like they say, you have to like reparent yourself. And like I think I'm going through that process now, and it's really hard.
Yeah. This chapter reminded me of a lot of my family members, and they're just like terrible parenting. Just no, I shouldn't say terrible parenting. I should say terrorizing parenting. Um, and it reminds me of like seeing my a relative post something on Facebook about like being young and having like a baby, and I told her like this is a really dumb like cool. I didn't say dumb pose, but I told her like you're pretty young. I don't think that you should be talking about like having kids or that you're ready to have a kid, because that's just pretty silly. And then she, of course, as expected, she like went off on me talking about like if I have like literally like sounding like page 260, and I'm just gonna read some of these. She said, Dr. Welsing, I'm gonna well, Dr. Welsing, I'm 16. I know I'm grown. Dr. Welsing, I'm gonna have number two, Dr. Welsing, I'm gonna have my baby. Nobody's gonna take my baby from me. I'm not gonna let those doctors kill my baby. I'm not gonna have no abortion. All right, I think number two is really important because you know, does do black parents or black people have the power to really prevent all of these things from happening to their child? Do they truly have that power without having total awareness of the system of race and white supremacy? I don't think so. So it's just very alarming that how unaware black people are to what's going on, to what's happening. Dr. Welsing, all my friends have baby. I want something of my own. I'm not gonna have an abortion. I'm going to love my baby. So one thing with that relative that I mentioned, like it was because like it involved her other friends like already having kids and knowing how to take care of them, blah blah blah. But I'm like, mm, tragic, tragic, tragic. Any comments?
Yeah, I have a comment, but it's more based off what Ash has said about how something happened to her, her mom just bought her something. I remember as a kid, I was highly emotional as a kid, very sensitive, would cry a lot. I remember I had an incident where my house had burned down, and I vividly remember like crying, and my mom told me not to cry like a bitch, verbatim, stop crying like a little bitch. So like it just shows you the lack of emotional maturity, and that definitely shaped how I grew up. I definitely started suppressing my emotions a lot more and being more cold hearted about situations. And then as an adult, I would tell people like to get over their problems because that's what I was told to do when I had problems, to get over it, and not to feel it. So just like that those types of the lack of emotional maturity has a lot of it can have a lot of negative effects on the person experiencing it.
Yeah, from page 62, it says there's an African proverb that states, "The hand that rocks the cradle rules the nation." I will paraphrase it. The level of emotional maturity in the hands that rock the cradle determines the fate of a nation. A people on their sojourn through time history are somewhat like a ship on the ocean. If many of people aboard the ship have extensive knowledge of the sea and navigation, the ship will have an excellent chance of reaching the desired destination. On the other hand, when the people aboard lack knowledge of the sea and navigation, are more likely the ship Should the sea become at all rough, will flounder into destruction. So this is what happens when we are not reared properly by our parents. We like don't mature emotionally, and then we just go on to live very destructive lives. Very like go on to get into relationships where we like terrorize each other, terrorize our partners, and we are terrorized. We go to schools where we're terrorized, and we just take so much terrorization from everything, and we aren't aware of where it's coming from. And a lot of the reason is because our parents did have knowledge to train us better, to teach us better, to develop us maximally. It just does not happen in Black community. It seems very rare that it does happen. Because I'm 29, just now learning about racial white supremacy. It's pretty sad, but I've been experiencing it my whole entire life. So, something has to change, or else, you know, we will surely not improve our situation anytime soon. Any
Yeah, I think the chapter's been very big on emotional maturity and, the need, basically like parents not getting it done, I think that it's important, it can be tough to talk about some of these things, especially if I was to talk about some of these things with my parents. They would just make it seem like I'm so ungrateful and I hate them and I don't appreciate anything they've done or did throughout their lives. So it's a very sensitive topic, but it is important, that we do discuss these things. And it's good that we at least know what the target is. It's to become emotionally mature. I know this kind of reminds me of like that habit I saw a lot like through, I would say, middle school, sixth grade to maybe eighth grade, and or throughout high school, and the constant need of like people to be in a relationship or to be dating somebody. And my I was just kind of like, well, you know, you can't really do much outside of school. Like you guys we're really just gonna see each other inside school. You know, we're not gonna go hang out. I don't have a car. I don't have money. I'm not gonna go to the mall or anything, and I'm not gonna ask my parents for it. So it's like a very like strange thing. It's just school life was very strange, and I just think like it's not real. Like you can't really build any kind of like maturity or emotional support like in that kind of environment, or and it's not like you're gonna get a chance to do it outside of that environment. So this chapter kind of reminded me of that. Um,
yeah, like also on page 62, like reading this particular part reminded me of like a sci-fi movie, but like maybe that's because I don't want to believe that is possible, but following logic, following what's happening right now, it is very possible. And I want to read it. It's if present conditions persist, history will record that Black people living in the U.S. failed to survive the 20th century AD. The failure will occur not simply because they were captured and oppressed people, but because they permitted themselves to become a blind people without any vision or understanding. History may record that Black elders and fathers and mothers had no vision, and therefore the Black children became stupid, thinking that they could nurture something as precious as the life of a new human being. As a result of all of this, Black people perished. So I'm like, damn, just wake up.
Sorry, Swat, to interrupt. Could you please screen share that, because for us that don't have the book, sorry, actually, can you read more of that those 2 pages? Because for us that don't have the book, 62 and 63 are not present in this in the ISIS papers. on the
Oh, oh well,
on the
yeah,
people.
yeah. I'll read the third, like the 40 paragraph. Then I'll just read it over. So so it says black people in the U.S. are in a parallel condition. The critical decisions that black people make now about black children becoming the parents of other black children will determine whether the ship reaches its destination intact or flounders off course and sinks, bringing almost certain to death all. If present conditions presents, history will record that black people living in the U.S. failed to survive the 20th century AD. This failure will occur not simply because they were a captured and oppressed people, but because they themselves became a blind people without any social vision or understanding. History may record that black elders and fathers and mothers had no vision, and therefore the black children became stupid, thinking that they could nurture something as precious as the life of a new human being. Of all of as a result of all this, black people perished. And the Old Testament of the Bible, the prophet Isaiah says, where there's no vision, the people were perished. Vision means the ability to understand the present and its totality and to organize one's behavior and the present to meet successfully the challenge of circumstance, present and future. A people that does not understand and thus fails to teach each generation that potential mothers and fathers must be able to carry out certain basic functions going far beyond mere material provisions and relationships with their children is a people without vision, a people amongst whom just anyone produces a child at any time without any serious thought or consideration, without any group recognized standard for parenthood, is a people on the brink of disaster. Black people in the US are at such a crisis point. So I totally agree with all this being said. All this being said, like we have a bunch of fucking kids and don't teach them a goddamn thing. We teach them to worship white people or just put them in front of white stuff and just leave them to fucking to deteriorate and die. So, any comments? So, did y'all just not just read these chapters at all because they're not in the book?
It's actually not in the book. It's not there.
Uh,
So, Swab, we read the chapter. It's just missing those 2 pages.
oh, all right. That's so interesting. These are really important pages.
Yeah, I was literally thinking the same thing. Vision is highly important, especially within. In terms everything that I just read, that you just read, sorry, what sparked in my mind is that we need to we need to we need to allow our parents or our elder counterparts, our elders who haven't got that emotional maturity to basically develop that very soon through. I feel like that should be our, like, when we're trying to focus on like countering white supremacy, countering it within our parents' generations. I don't think that they're a lost cause. I feel like it will be easier and quicker because of that life experience to convert them to a countering mentality and a more healing mentality, because we need all like the energetic and metaphysical support that we can get. And if our parents are not emotionally mature, from what I've experienced, especially in the African, West African household, if your mother is angry at you, life can be really, really, really hard. If your mother is jealous of you, life can be really suppressive, and you have to already fight outside of that your home environment. You're gonna have to fight white supremacy. It should be like a warrior camp at home where they're gearing you up to go about your day, not dealing with minor hating, pain, jealousy at home, and then going out to you're just insufficient. So I feel like that's allowing our parents to see the vision will help fuel us energetically, at least, or have that energetic support. And like not be free, like, because there's a thing in like Western culture, West African culture called like mother's blessing, where like you do good by your mother and you basically are like life is good for you in life, like because even in the Islam principles as well, like you do good by your mother and like heaven is granted to you. But like if your mother is under like is not emotionally mature, that could look like, I don't know, keeping her happy under a whim of like, if her mind changes, you get like a negative energy sent your way. You just get depressive, or she gets very incursive, and like, you know how we have like spiritual tongues in the sense that your mother is speaking bad against you in anger, or like lack of understanding about your relationship with her, and she's just speaking negatively on your name, and it just energetically is just not helpful. And I feel like spiritually, while our parents are in this life, we need all the energetic support we can get. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going around the circles, but that's what came to my mind when you read that first. So thank you for reading that page, most of that page for me.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna finish reading.
Yeah, I really. Oh, you're gonna finish reading? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to finish reading this page first, so everyone has the same understanding. Many many Black people's understanding of the roles of mother and father is limited to the view of mothers as females who simply give birth to children, and fathers as males who simply impregnate women. The act of creating life is taken so lightly that schools children sing and joke about it, being provided such songs by their elders. Record companies make millions of dollars paying cheap songs about what fun it is to bring a child into the world, when this should be the most highly respected exchange between a man and a woman. Yet, for us as people, the definition of a parent is becoming limited to a person who has participated in producing an offspring, even though many of these persons are unprepared to participate fully in the development of those offspring. In effect, no real progress has been made from the time when we were formerly were considered as breeders of human beings, who were viewed as having no true human worth, merely things to be used and misused. Thus, a Black mother can be a 10, 12, or 16-year-old female. A black father can then be a 13, 14, or 15-year-old male. So this is back like we're on a plantation being forced to to breed. You know, if you really think about it and compare the situation, it's reverted back to that level in a sense.
Yeah, I wanted to first talk about what Mary was saying in the passage that you were reading, the first part of that passage saw. I really think it's really important that we really, as Black people, have like a collective standard to how we raise our children and what we like expect from our children and what we expect from parents. And I think that it's important because you could literally have like, you know, a set standard in your heart about how your child wants to be raised, but unfortunately, like, they are raised in a community and it's a really traumatized community. And until we as a collective come to those agreements, your kid's gonna be really confused when they're like in one home being like, you know, taught to be like a warrior, or at least taught to understand how to combat white supremacy, and then they go to another home where it's like people are obviously just succumbing to white supremacy. And so I think it's like we really need to all be on the same page. And the other thing I wanted to say was in that part that you just read, um, I really think that we live in a society that glorifies like just like the whole act of like pregnancy and birth and the ritual of that, without really understanding that like a kid comes with that like is going to exist here on this planet for however long they will exist. And I think that I know a lot of people who like their parents or they like had kids just because of the act of or feeling of being pregnant and having a kid, and that ritual was just so spiritually, I guess, like healing for them or something to get that type of attention and love and care when they were pregnant. And that once they have their kids, like after their kids reach a certain age, there's just like this abandonment. And I think with like social media, it even gets even further because I think a lot of parents like showcase their kids now a lot and like have their kids out as props to like do things for an audience. And I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that like I think that we need to have more standards about how we raise our kids, because if we really had standards, we wouldn't be like propping up our kids as like, you know, commodities online and stuff like that. But we would actually see them as like whole beings. That's it.
Yeah, I would say kids are just due to this. Kids are becoming like close to accessories in a lot of black families. You know, like they give them their like cool little fresh Jordans, cool little vest. Don't do no reading time with the children, but they got the cool clothes and some jewelry, and they're on Instagram for some reason. Hashtag baby models. But I digress.
Yeah, I mean, collectively, all these chapters have emphasized to me the importance of children as the future, like literally the future of a race. And Black people are definitely failing our children a number of ways due to racism, white supremacy. And until that is addressed and acknowledged, like what Mary was saying, what you just said, what Ash said, it's all like failing our future basically by failing our children.
Yeah, but yeah, I feel like the black collective was like it's failing. Period. You know, failing it's failing itself. It's failing to reach self respect, deep self respect, and then it's failing to teach these things to its children. It's just an entire collective of being being terrorized, and that resulting into us being in this current state.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember if it was in this chapter, but when she says, you know, like children are not gonna provide you with like love, they just provide you with like demands. And I think that that's like something that people really need to understand, and understand that, you know, you are not gonna get fulfillment from like having a child. You need to be fulfilled to like provide for that child, because all they are for you is like a demand, and that's not a bad thing. That's because like they need you to understand how to navigate this world. And like what you were, and I think in another part she said something about how people literally sometimes people see their kids as like someone to just have fun with, and I've seen that dynamic a lot, and it's really really like unhealthy to just have a kid and like want and only think about having fun moments with them, and not actually being prepared to like provide for their like intellectual and emotional well-being. So
100%. And tying back to what we were saying earlier, like the experience that me, you, and Adanish have had in our households of having an increased sense of responsibility at an early age. I feel like, especially with parents who are like survival or migrated over and had to get into that survival instinct, I feel like it's very much what's the word that I was looking for? Sorry, what's the word that I was looking for? Like they see you as their savior. You're here to be their helping hand. Being the most educated, you're here to do everything that they couldn't, and you should do it because they got you to England or this far, or this certain the guilt, responsibility, and high levels of guilt experience for choosing yourself in any circumstances, and well, the type of household that I grew up in. And I feel like that's very much not understanding the mechanisms of why you are here to have a child. They literally saw it as this will be our savior. Like I feel like I'm their Jesus.
Mate, my name means she rescued them, so I know what you mean. The guilt.
Look at that.
Wow. Yeah, I think
Uh,
I'm gonna read this part from 264. It says the following statistics are reflective of the extent to which these limited definitions are operative amongst large numbers of blacks. Teenage mothers account for a half of the out of wedlock children born both to blacks and whites in 1976. Approximately 25% of all black children are being born to teenage mother. Virtually all unwed teenage mothers, 90% keep their babies. 25% of teenage mothers get pregnant again within a year after their first baby, and 15% within the second year. This tendency of repetition condemns many girls to a life of poverty, poor education, and welfare. In all too many cases, teenage mothers do not finish high school and they find it more difficult to get jobs. Their children are also condemned to lives of poverty and stress. Sounds like some of my cousins, man, this entire chapter, especially this part. And the tendency to get pregnant again, I think it may tie into what Ash said about how like during like the pregnancy they may get more care and attention from like their social circle, but when it's over, it's like you know it's gone, and then the cycle repeats. It's a circular destructive pattern that black people often find themselves in, whether it's going to the liquor store or doing anything else.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on what Ashley had said earlier in terms of like us or like parenthood being ritualized in terms of I want to be pregnant, I want to be loved, I'm this attention that is experienced. I also feel like it's also within again I can mainly talk about West African culture, is also like the highest glory to give birth to a male. And like a lot of female my aunties have experienced them saying, oh, at least I gave him a boy. So for whatever reason they're just happy, but like they're the most ill prepared for males, and society literally chews and eats them up. But there's this glorification or understanding that males are important in the household, but yet the as soon as they hear it's a feminized, not nurtured, and some are nurtured in the right way, but there's more association with, oh, I have to have a boy than I have to raise a boy. It's very different.
Hmm. Anyone have any more comments?
This child parents, children parents as a new factor in Black genocide really reminded me of the fear I had as a kid of like just not ever wanting to have kids while I was young. Even now, I don't want to have kids until like self sufficient, self respecting, and like just a better Black person, basically a better warrior. And I just um, it was kind of saddening to see so many of my cousins and like even my own family member, my own mom, like being someone who could be like used as the example for the chapters like 20, 21, and 22. Um, yeah, just it was a lot. It was a lot for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment about page 265, but let me just read it.
Oh my bad.
Thank you. I just wanted to I'm gonna read it out and then I'm gonna ask a question. Where is it in particular?
You're looking for the question she asked about
Yeah, I think it's question 2. In actuality, the child's mother emotional development stops progressing when she becomes responsible for another life. It may not resume until the child's mother is relieved of all responsibility for parenting and can continue her own maturation with the guidance and support of mature adults outside of the family circle. For me, because there's households where, I wasn't raised by my mother. My mother left when I was like 1. I was raised by my grandma, who had a lot of emotional maturity, but again, you are aware that that's not your mother. She's not aware of UK or social cues in a sense. So like my socialization was completely different, and I realized I wasn't being brought up the way other people were being brought up. But when she was also a childminder, so there's lots of children in the house constantly all the time. So I didn't have the dynamic of feeling like I was a single parent, a single sibling, and then growing up to actually have brothers and sisters, like 9 of us. That was a different change of dynamic. But the point that I'm trying to make is that in a household where I had to be mature very quickly, in a sense of like making sure I had what I needed outdoors socially, because my grandma couldn't provide that, and also minding after the younger kids in the house, I felt like I had to stop emotionally developing for very early. Despite not having a child yet, I felt like I had to take on that role in my household for a number of years. I feel like I only stopped at like maybe 20, 21, and was very, very, very strong between 14 and like 17. So I feel like the question I want to ask is, do you feel like it's only within like motherhood that you can experience the state of having to like stop your own emotional development? I feel like traumatic experiences where you have to take on some form of like, okay, so like let's say you was molested as a child and you don't share who it was, and you protect that person, taking on that responsibility from a child age to an adult age. I feel like from reading this, it stops your emotional development, and I just wanted to get everyone else's thoughts on that.
I can't. I definitely would see why that would hinder development of the mother. So I definitely would agree with that. I can't say whether I don't have any personal experiences, but I could definitely see how having to care for another life can halt somebody else's development for sure.
Yeah, and I could also see how having someone in your survival unit, um, having like a person to experience abuse from someone in their survival unit can definitely stop their emotional development. Not because of the stuff that Cress Welsing is discussing, but just because that's just one of the effects of that sort of trauma. And also even if that person is also having to take on like other roles like caring for the family, then yeah, you can definitely expect that a lot of growth to be stunted, psychosocial developmental growth. um I think it's good. I really like this chapter because she's not just like she. Oh, do you else want to answer the question or try attempt to?
Yeah, I wanted to answer the question. I think it's a really good question. Like I know I have a lot of people that I know who are in Narcotics Anonymous or Alcohol Anonymous, and they talk about how like when you're an addict, you don't grow past the day that your addiction started. And I think with Black people in general, we're kind of like addicted to like our oppressor in a sense, addicted to like, in a way, we're like addicted to white supremacy or like addicts too. And I think that you have to like actively push yourself to emotionally mature. Just being a Black person in the society, I think you're going to be emotionally stunted just because you don't even have the capacity or room to grow, and no one really around you is emotionally mature, so you don't even have a template for that. It takes like books like these to really challenge you. Some things are emotionally mature, immature because I think a lot of people know it in their hearts, but they don't know, like, they don't have the language for it or really understand how to grow, if that makes sense. So I think like we're all pretty much like emotionally stunted to an extent unless we like really force ourselves to grow.
Yeah, I agree, Ash. That's a good comment. It's a good insight. I think it's really
Definitely, I agree. I agree as well. Ash, just wanted to add that.
Mhm.
I think it's definitely a big part of it would be definitely being conscious and aware of it. So if you're able to do that, uh, if you're able to be conscious and aware of it, I definitely believe you can make strides to, improve your own development and keep your development going in a positive direction.
Yeah, I like how
I
she's.
just
Uh, I like how she's not just like I like how she mentioned all the like health complications that teenage mothers can experience, and that was really important. I'm not gonna read that part and because I'm losing my voice, but I really appreciate that, and it makes perfect sense because yeah, I was like Trey, like I was always terrified of having a baby because I know I'm no way at that time I was no way qualified to bring any baby into this world. I've had like really like I've had thoughts. If I yeah, I was definitely like Trey, not trying to have a baby, terrified of the thought, because I'm not qualified to bring an offspring into this world. And I've had the thoughts in high school when I was sexually en- engaging with folks. Well, after high school, I should say, 19 years old. Um, I
I
want to.
did want to.
Uh
Sorry, go ahead. What was you gonna say?
I was just gonna like ask this question. Particularly, are Black children prepared to function together as mothers and fathers under the conditions of racism, which is exceedingly complex and creates high level stress for non-white people? So I really like this question. So maybe could be a question that we ask, like, people who are like, you want to have kids, or we're like, are you prepared to bring in a offspring to a complex system that creates high level stress for non-white people? Are you prepared to do that? And are you prepared to contend with what that means? And this is a very great question. Well, these entire three chapters were they're great, and like talking to people and actually helping people with children and giving them like some tips. Like even if it's like
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Ezekiel, yeah, Ezekiel, oh good.
Oh, I was just gonna add, to that because she does a good job in the chapter talking about like that, you know, living in white supremacy is considered a high stress environment. So, it's one of those things again where stop thinking that you and white people are the same. You don't experience life the same as white people. So when you're having children, you need to be aware that you're living in a high stress environment due to white supremacy and racism. So it takes almost extra effort. It definitely takes extra effort and awareness to accomplish what you're about to engage in. So if you're not aware of that, you definitely need to stay away from having children.
Mhm. Yep. And I read this part and I was like, wow, the implications are not good. And it says from also 265, many believe that parenthood when it occurs in childhood causes the child mother to achieve emotional maturity rapidly. I used to believe this. I used to thought that you have a kid, you gotta have to like you gotta do a lot of stuff. I used to think it's possible for a person to manage all this stuff. In actuality, the child mother emotional development stops progressing, and when she becomes responsible for another life. I know Mary, I read this, but this reminds me of my friends who went down that path of of teenage pregnancy, and how today they're still like the exact same people they were when I met them, and how they were still like just how like yeah how like just like it's such like a pattern of like unproductivity and just so sad. I mean, just this is a really like how can you not be like just disappointed, even if you understand like what's going on? You know, like people like it just it's just a lot of feelings to contend with under this system. Like Ezekiel just said, like she's been saying all chapter. This very high stress society we live in, especially if you're black. You know, there's a lot of stress. You gotta think about all this stuff. You gotta respond to all this stuff. You know, well, actually, you don't have to respond to a lot of stuff, but you're programmed to.
Yeah, I agree with like everything you said. So I grew like my in like high school and stuff, like or not even high school, but and after high school, my group of friends were like definitely normalized having kids at a really young age. And I also like had thought that like, oh, if you have a kid at a young age, you just become like really, really mature and it's like adulthood times 10 or something. But that's not what it's like at all. Like you just like I mean, for some people they become mature in some ways, but in terms of like taking like how Mary was saying, you become mature in terms of like administrative stuff. But I don't think that until I went to like college and be with my parents. And that was the only time I was actually alone with my parents. I was like 19.
Mm. Yeah, and it's just to bring this point home on page 266, she says some child parents show a very short period of seeming responsibility towards the newborn, only to collapse after 6 to 12 months of imposed responsibility. Many of these child mothers began to develop resentment and anger and hatred towards their children. The child the children are aware of these negative feelings, although they are unable to articulate their experiences of emotional rejection and deprivation. And you're gonna skip a little. It says eating problems, extreme tantrums, stubbornness, excessive activity, and excessive crying may manifest before these children reach the age of school attendance. The vicious cycle begins when when the mothers, due to their own lack of emotional maturity, fail to meet the dependency and emotional demands of their newborn children. In 10 to 14 years, the new emotionally starved children began to act out sexually, attempting to have these long-standing dependency needs met via sexual intercourse. If it is a if it is a female child, very shortly thereafter she becomes pregnant. She blindly believes she needs and wants a baby to satisfy her needs. As a result, another generation of emotional starvation is set in motion. So we live in a vicious cycle, not only in our own individual lives, but like the generational trauma we keep hearing about. A lot of folks have mentioned in their scholarly work, generational trauma. This is what it looks like. This is what it is. This is like kids having babies growing up, not like being able to be constructive people, self-respecting people. Then going on to do what they've been trained to do by white supremacists, which is act silly, kill each other, or just obsess over money, getting some money, or just just strive to survive. which is also not the best way to live your life. It's very stressful to do that too. So just really harsh world we're born into. Really a lot of tough things to contend with. But I do believe the more people are aware of this problem, racial white supremacy, the more hopefully people will be willing to learn about it and counter it in all areas of people activity.
I 100% agree. I wanted to read from page 267. I feel like this part highlights a lot of the reasons why I can only speak for the UK, but why a lot of Black women experience mental health breakdowns around mid quarter life, between like 25, usually like responsibility build up, definitely lack of understanding of self grooming, self protection, and not having any self protection in place from an early age, or protective voices in place, create this, and not even feeling worthy, so accepting the least, but also striving like really hard to like build up yourself as society, but then and then literally having a mental health breakdown and collapsing. And I'm gonna just read where exactly what for me solidified that theory that I already have from what I'm experiencing over here in the UK. Beyond these activities, the child who eventually is abandoned by the child mother becomes convinced that he or she is worthless and not worthy of deep mother love. The child concludes that something must have been wrong with him or her from birth, for the mother to have abandoned him or her. Either the mother realized the baby to care to the care of um, release the baby to the care of relatives, the welfare agency, the adoption agency, or foster parents. The child is not able to understand that the mother was too emotionally immature to become a parent. The child only recognizes that, one, he or she was given away by a mother. Two, the mother could not provide him or her adequate care, or the mother physically or or the mother physically abused him or her, or allowed their boyfriend to do so. The child summarizes it all the child summarizes it all as, I must not be worth anything. All the substitute care in the world by grandparents and others that does not remove this wound and deep-seated doubt about the self that remains with the child for a length of his or her life, producing a severe distrust and alienation from others. This is one of the major reasons that many persons enter psychotherapy as adults, primarily with the symptoms of depression. I'm gonna stop there, but that sentence in particular, producing a severe distrust of and alienation from others, that's something I definitely feel like I've experienced, and that I feel like that's what also leads to mental health breakdown: not sharing or communicating with people, and then experiencing all of these by yourselves, and not feeling like what you have to say is worthy of anybody's time, because in your first imprint is that you wasn't worthy of your mother's time. So why would you spend time complaining or sharing your feelings or receiving constructive help from anybody? Yeah, that's just yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that, Mary.
yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Mary. That's deep. I want to read this from also 267. Blacks would be horrified if anyone suggested the outright slaughtering of 25% of Black children. Again, Black screen genocide when outspoken white supremacists suggest sterilization of 25% or more of the Black population. Yet, the aforementioned pattern of child parenting, presently widespread in the Black population, achieves exactly the same results. The only difference is that with Black child parents, the Black child's death is more painful and drawn out. A living death. It is a living death in this highly complex society, left to be unable to sit still in school and achieve academically because of incorrect socialization. It is a living death for a child to be shifted repeatedly from one foster home to another. It is a living death for a child to walk the streets addicted to drugs or alcohol. It is a living death to be a school dropout. So I'm gonna stop, but she goes, oh, wait a minute. It is a living death to walk the streets as a prostitute. It is a living death to sneak around the street as a thief. It is a living death to suffer the depression of unemployment because you are uneducated and unskilled. It is a living death for a child to be attacked by teachers and others for being bad, meaning his or her behavior is unsocialized. It is a living death for a child to be confined to a psychiatric hospital. It is a living death to spend a lifetime locked up behind bars of a juvenile detention or a prison cell. Depression that results from not having had sufficient patience and confident mothering is also a living death. Many of these syndromes of living death led to forms of actual death such as suicide, drug overdose, and homicide. More often than not, the deaths are the direct result of child parenting children. So I want to also add that it's a living death to grow up thinking that you could get value from social media and participating in that, which the generation does a lot. I would say it's a living death to think you could get some kind of validity and some kind of meaningful like life from participating and hanging out with like people from the LGQP or whatever, especially if people are white, because any alliance and allegiance to whiteness is destructive and dangerous for black people and non-white people. So that's a living death to think white people, to trust white people. It's a living death to want to be like them and assimilate to them. It's a living death to do a lot of things. You know, our diet is a living death. Participate in the American diet is a living death. So I think there's a lot of living death that we can like point out if we care to. So I really love this part of the book because it just reminds me of a lot of other scholars who have mentioned that a lot of black people um, live in this way, like being a dead people, like due to the trauma and terrorization they've experienced under white supremacy. Any comments? Anyone want to
Just
share?
makes me more empathetic towards like it's not just the struggle that like we go through as individuals, it's a collective struggle. So in order for us to I guess grow and develop, we have to be have some kind of empathy for people who may hurt us as they are developing themselves and emotionally building themselves up the same way that we enjoyed trauma they did too. Um wow, this book is very, very deep.
I agree. So I think a lot of black people who do put themselves in position to be around white people, especially white people who belong to the LGBTQ community, are like doing themselves an injustice. And I really confuse at the end of the day if you are putting yourselves in white spaces uh, on purpose without clear intentions that are going to be self productive and group productive if possible, then you are definitely confused and doing yourself an injustice. Just want to add aside to that. I do think it's unhealthy for black people to constantly be around white people, especially considering the large disparities and power dynamics between black people and non-white people and white people. It's just like a complete power disbalance. So until that's sorted, we shouldn't really be in the same spaces unless we are like demanding change. When I say demanding change, I mean like saying, "Hey, in racism, white supremacy."
Yeah. And this is on 268, really important thing to remember. By solving the emotional and psychological basis of Black functional inferiority, we will be placing ourselves in the best possible position to solve the social, po- political basis of Black functional inferiority, racism. So, this is the best way to go about, one of the best ways to go about solving this problem is making sure that, like, those of us who are participating in procreation are aware of this problem and are going to be able to support ourselves and teach our young about, the problem and how to counter it, or else should not procreate, should not feel like you have the right to procreate just because you were born with the means to do so. That you're doing a disservice to the Black collective and that child. Not that the Black collective has any power to tell you to do anything, but it is what it is. I wanna. This reminds me of the Maury show and just how, like, I feel like that kind of entertainment maybe justifies and also promotes this kind of behavior. Black child, pro- like, adds to the production of Black child parents. And this is on page 271. It is a sham to allow these teenagers to believe that they can somehow learn to be long-term effective parents when they are only emotionally immature children. Teenage children who become parents know absolutely nothing about the meaning, about meeting the emotional and development needs of a child. They are looking to have their own needs gratified, needs that never were gratified when they were infants and small children. That's super important. When you play around with sex, the joke is the offspring, and that's what our people seem to be doing around these parks, playing around with sex.
Yeah, I wanted to add, 'cause you brought up a good point about Maury. I remember, you guys remember that show, Teenage Pregnancy or whatever on
Um,
MTV. I
yeah.
I can't I can't remember how many seasons or how many episodes or how many marathons they had of that show, and all I could think was this is just would encourage people to have kids as teenagers. They're glorifying it right in front of us, like these people are making a living in a life, like they're celebrities based solely off of having a child as a teenager.
Um, when I
They
was
make it
reading, that's the
easy.
exact TV show I thought of. 16 and pregnant. How
There you go.
women
That's what it's
were
called.
encouraged to have babies. No, they weren't encouraged overtly, but covertly by having this TV show. You are condoning and like encouraging like teen pregnancy, and like they made it a spectacle. Like they made it entertaining to watch women struggle with like raising these children, and yeah, when I was reading this, that show popped into my mind for sure. 16 and pregnant, and it's not. We see what raising being a child and raising a child. We see what that does. It definitely helps the inferiorization process, and it's not productive. It's not productive. It's destructive to the black people. Black people.
I
Yeah.
totally agree
Yeah, I
with
used
you.
to watch that show a lot, and like one thing too about that show is that the children, there's never any emphasis showing the rearing of the actual children or like anything about what it really means to take care of these kids. It's literally just like the kids are the backdrop of all these people's like insane like drama and like abusive relationships, etc. And there's never even there's only segments that show maybe how cute the kids are, but they never like actually show what it's like to raise a kid. And I think that people watch those shows and people think that their child will literally just be a backdrop in their life, like just someone who's just in the background. And Dr. Welsing was saying, like, you know, children are very like demanding. And I just thought about that when watching that show, that it's not even about the kids. It's literally just about these people's really horrible relationships, and the kids are barely even shown as like what it takes to actually rear a child.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ash. Um, this part reminded me of like just reality that like black parents like rely too much on like other entities to like raise their children. Like I think they expect like the school system to really like teach their kids or take care of their children. Well, that's what I experience a lot when I interact with black parents, and like from what I've seen when working in schools, they expect like the school to do like everything for the child. And she says also on 271, a child whose dependency needs have not been gratified is a child who will be unable to learn even if a school breakfast has been provided on a plastic plate. So this is just like the importance of like that black parents have to really start doing a lot more in order to call themselves parents, or else they're just like, you know, really good tools of white supremacy, doing a great job of furthering the inferiorization of our people.
Yeah, enough respect. Sorry, love. Enough respect to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, because what she's done here in these 3 chapters is what it's and particularly for me, chapter 20, but this chapter along with the chapter 21 has really allowed me to just understand why certain things happen in society. And even through the context of white supremacy, you would say that I get why this is happening in society, but this layer of understanding shows why something will look like it's a good thing and it's really and truly negative. Like the statement you just read in terms of even if it was handed to them in a platter, it wouldn't be sufficient enough. And like what we were saying earlier in terms of being raised in society to fulfill an inferior role for be it oppressed or the oppressor. In the UK, if around 16, I don't know how it is now, but around like when I was like 16, 17, people were the government were giving houses very much quicker to people who were pregnant. And no matter how much you would try and get up that ladder to be to get a council property sooner, if the people who were given priority were pregnant women, no matter what age, especially if you're young. And so that probably propelled people, and definitely propelled people, to have children while there were still children as well. And of course, no matter they'll give them a house happily, but in the long run, what they have there is two tools for white supremacy to use if they do not break out of the system. So these chapters help me understand how something may look like it's a positive, like being prioritized for a home, but you're prioritized to live in a home where you're not going to function and build it to its best ability or maximum of Black interest development. It's more so a grounds of just where you go back and forth to work, your child is enrolled into this system, giving money to the government through their taxes, through child tax benefits or credits, or however it's laid out. Society really lays it out for you to heavily rely on them as a government. And yeah, it looks like, yeah, I think I've made my point.
Yep.
I also wanted to add to what Mary said. I remember in America, when we had our welfare system established, they were in the and one of the rules, if you were to get welfare, there cannot be a male in the home. Like, so if you want welfare, you cannot have a father in the home. And who remembers that? Am I the only person that remembers that?
No, yeah, that's definitely still real. Like I went through that.
Yeah. And it says on page 272, really important. Child parents in general are concerned with the normal interests of most children, simply fun and games and parties. Also, child parents who have their own unmet dependency needs often will find themselves too preoccupied with having these needs met through constant sexual activity. They are then useless for meeting the continuing needs of young children. I agree to this 100%, and I also want to just comment, just recall like just the black parents in my life who like would fucking go clubbing, would get dressed up to go out like clubbing and drinking, you know. And I think that's really like, unconstructive behavior for a group of like adults to come. I feel that's the only thing, like that's one of the few things that black people can know how to like, plan how to do, like come together and go to a club. A lot of black people can sure enough like do that, and that will be successful. They all get there in fashion. But when it comes to doing constructive things, it's much harder to get done.
There's actually sorry, I don't mean to ignore what you were saying, so, but I think we should watch this movie for the next movie day. It's something that Trey just reminded me of. It's like a 1960s movie about a woman who's like on welfare, a black woman, and there's a white woman social worker who like keeps coming to her house, and the black woman is like falling in love with another black man, but she keeps having to hide him because like the white social worker keeps threatening to like take her money away and stuff. It just reminded me of what Trey was saying. It'd be a good movie to watch.
Yeah, we can probably watch it next week. Anyone want to share anything? Well, one of my final comment is I want to read this. Blacks as a people must understand that black child parenting under the stress of racism is group destructive behavior. And as such, it cannot be condoned by the people. It must be controlled. So, and she also says only older black person can parent and instruct black children towards success under the stress of racism. In other words, the correct behavior for black people attempting to end their oppression under racism is to prevent by all possible means children from giving birth to or parenting children. So I agree to that because black liberation needs like strong people. It needs like the strong male and female, and it needs them to produce strong offsprings who will be able to be highly aware of what they're going to be dealing with and how the system is designed to inferiorize them. So I don't think there will ever be black liberation without addressing a lot of the issues that this book brings to attention, especially like the inferiorization of our black children and black just teenage pregnancy in a black community is really catastrophic to our liberation and to our future.
Thank you so much. My closing comment will have to be it's from the same very page that you read, Swa, actually, just a little bit lower. when the black collective begins to understand that power is directly related not to money but to the correct behavior pattern, organization, behavior, discipline, and behavior control on the part of the individual and the collective, the black collective will be well on its way towards the new level of political understanding, power, and maturity. Yeah, enough said. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing said it best. We need to understand
Yeah.
maturity and power to thrive as a collective.
Yep. People love to say that, we need to get we need to get the money, we need to get economics, to get black businesses. There's much, much, much more than that, much deeper than that. It's only in one area, economics. And we're dealing with war on all fronts. So thanks for sharing that, Mary. Closing comments, final moments to share.
Yeah, my closing comment. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, my closing comment. Yeah, great chapters, much needed reading as usual. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, I thank her. I thank the ancestors for putting her in my way, in my path, in my journey. Great knowledge need to share with people. I have nothing to read. Everything's been said, and I enjoyed my time tonight with you guys.
Yeah, I don't. Everything. A lot of things have been said. I just want to reiterate: children are the future of any race. So black children are the future of our race. And if we have a mass collection of children who are not being raised properly, they're just gonna be easy to be slaughtered by the system of white supremacy and racism. So if you have kids, and when you have kids, please be honest with them and tell them about racism, white supremacy. Tell them, hey, if you're feeling insecure by yourself, it's because the programming is trying to convince you to hate yourself. Just be honest. Be honest about how you're feeling, and be honest about how you were raised. And my new way of being. Just be honest about how I'm feeling about white supremacy and how it affects me. The children are the future.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on what Trey said, because I've been actively doing that today, and I agree. Thank you for that, Trey. As far as being honest with children, that they're being slaughtered.
The truth shall set people free, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's what everyone needs is the truth, that which is. It's just we're just no more oh you yeah, I really yeah, we cannot say that we respect ourselves until such fundamental objectives have been achieved as they constitute the basis for developing a future for the collective. So we got a long ways to go as a black collective, y'all. Long ways. But as long as the people are doing the good work, it's not a lost cause. If there's nothing else anyone to say or adjourn,